Yo, thank you for tuning in to No Flag Radio. I'm your host, P. Saying what's up. Today we talking about why do these white supremacist militias get a chance to show up at all these natural disasters and shit. So we hear how militias are able to be formed in the United States. We talk about that. We all know about that. But in the black community, there's really not a focus on some of the hows and some of the intricacies of how it's being done by white people and kind of how they running it. And as we talk about that on this channel, unfortunately, we have what I like to call predominantly do-nothing black veterans. Let me get a picture of our black veterans up here so they can know I'm talking about them. There you go. There they go. We have these predominantly do-nothing black veterans who don't want to put in that kind of work and research for black society on the militia side. They get out the service and they just want to walk around the hood, gorilla chest beating around niggas in the hood like they tough around niggas. Looking for only the real clout chasing ass spoils from enlisting in the military and the notoriety shit. But ignore the whole big ass picture that they joined in the first place so they could fight for the good treatment of white people, the good treatment that they get in America, and that black people get denied every goddamn day in, day out, right? And we see that. That's the real Sambo shit they going on in their program, right? Real Sambo shit they got popping up. And they're A-okay with it. They're A-okay with white supremacist society just arming up and gunning up and militarizing around us, and they don't have no type of response. And we talk about the leanings of these predominantly white militia groups who now surround us. And I spoke recently of race soldiers formalizing how they execute black people. So I figured, it's only right to look at how militia groups also formalize killing black people and how we can counter it using the same tactics that they do. We speak of this militia cop fed complex, so let's not leave out the militias, right? The thing about militias I want us to grasp today is how they get approved by the states to be on call during emergency times. Like, how do they get approved to be on call? I think that's a severely overlooked aspect by the black community, unfortunately, right? It's like, motherfuckers, y'all don't, you military niggas, y'all don't see that shit? Y'all don't pay attention to that shit? And, a lot of us don't think about it like this. We just say, oh, there goes the militia motherfuckers. They probably on some white supremacist shit. There go them white supremacist militias. There they go again doing some dirt whenever these different exposés come out about them. But we don't stop to think about, how they got normalized, how they got there, how they got wherever they got, right? And what's the loophole that allows them to be in existence in the first place in seemingly such an organized white supremacist capacity? And why are they also allowed to show up in neighborhoods out of nowhere during emergency situations? I'm gonna tell y'all why. Because this used to fuck with me as to why, right? Like, I did not know, but now I know. Militias, once formed, whatever kind of militia, they have approval in every state in America to be called on in emergency situations. And I'm gonna say like every state. From what I read, it seemed like it's every state. They have it worded in different ways, but I'm gonna say every state they can be called on in emergency situations, in particular, under the guise of rendering aid to the U.S. military, the National Guard, the Air Force, the Navy, the whoever the fuck else, right? That's why we see their asses during natural disasters. throwing up white power symbols and all that shit, right? Okay, it's a very overlooked policy, and state for state, we see white supremacist tinged militias taking advantage of this to keep up a heavy white supremacist presence in that emergency management field. If you ever heard of emergency management, right? Whenever something go down in a city or a state, disaster or some shit, across cities, across states, there's an emergency management plan, emergency management department type shit going on, right? And these white supremacist militias have just taken up that territory basically when it comes to disasters. And I'll put a link to each of the state's policies on militias during emergencies so y'all see what I mean. You'll see what these white supremacist militias are doing. They're approved to exist by the Constitution of the United States in one breath, which we know is from the Second Amendment, well-regulated militia being necessary to secure a free state. The right of the people to keep and bear arms should not be infringed, and they use that as, okay, we can make a militia and hold all these guns, right? And in the next breath, we got these state policies that regulate militia deployment in each state in an emergency capacity. You see? Now, what we see here in America thus far is only white supremacist groups have been stepping up to the plate to act in this capacity. All right? And that's the fucking problem. Only white supremacist militia have been stepping up with running this white supremacist, racist white supremacist connotation to their militias and then showing up to these types of events and occasions. So from the outside looking in, just that alone kind of deters other races and groups away from even fucking with the militia game in one respect. Like, hold up, who are all these Confederate flag waving AR-15 with the Confederate flag wrapped on it, motherfucking Confederate flag print bulletproof vest toting motherfuckers throwing up white supremacist gang signs talking about they a militia? Who are these motherfuckers showing up every time some emergency happens, right? Making a command presence, whatever, something going on. Hold up, I ain't really feeling this militia game, right? It's full of white supremacist bullshit. You see, this is how people think, right? So, other groups who don't give a fuck about a Confederate flag, namely black people, we'll kind of back off just because these racist white supremacist militias, these anti-government groups, most of them, they've already kind of touched down in the field, so to speak, and got the drop on spreading they white supremacist salt on the shit, squirting they white supremacist mayo on the whole thing, putting a negative white supremacist flair around militias. It has been turning people off from the militia game, namely black people. But this emergency deployment loophole that I'm talking about is the cover under which they're acting in many cases, and they're going about it under the guise of an emergency aid organization or even an unorganization. They don't even have to be like an organized entity in the cases of several states, you see? But all in all, this is them formalizing anti-black death squads. This is something that the black community has been ignoring, and we can't really afford to ignore it. We got to replace it under the banner of black empowerment. We got to do the same under the banner of black empowerment is the issue. Put up some more of these motherfuckers. All right? It's got to be done in favor of us, and not necessarily like we don't necessarily need like a particular name or some shit like that, like one name, specifically named militia group under one moniker, no shit like that. It could be all different types of names, just as long as they're on code to protect black people when shit get crazy, right? Cause you see these white supremacist militias, we see they're on white supremacist code. They kicking anti-government code. They kicking Confederacy code. They kicking white supremacist code, you see? But they all got different names. The 3%ers, the blah, blah, blah security force, the security force, blah, 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 the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, right? So we need to keep an eye on how they do what they do as we mobilize in our own communities and whatnot. I mentioned in my video, White Looter Shooters, how these militia groups go out and they shoot black people during these national emergencies and geographical emergencies type shit, right? And with this video, I want y'all to know that for them to be able to do so under the color of state emergency aid organization, that is the true definition of deputized. That's another thing I wanted to talk about. We use the term deputized a lot, and with militias using state regulations as license, so to speak, to underhandedly commit atrocities upon black society, is the best example of how these various white exclusive groups with white supremacist ideals are deputized. We saw it during Hurricane Katrina with the Algiers Point white supremacist militia. They killed up 11 black people out there from Algiers Point. That was various white supremacist militias that came together and set upon black people. We saw during Hurricane Harvey, right, down in Houston. The Proud Boys and the Oath Keepers brought their stinking asses down there talking about they looking for looters, when that shit was just a field trip for them to go down there and kill black people if they could. You remember that? They showed up after all the shit was calmed the fuck down. The water was subsiding. All the ground rescue people, they did their job. These motherfuckers showed up after all the shit is done. These people done lost everything. And they coming around the motherfuckers talking about they protecting businesses. Business insurance protects businesses from those kind of losses. Looting and so forth, right? So, of course, these motherfuckers is out on a motherfucking mission in general. People is on a mission out there, on a finding mission, trying to find whatever they can find. You know what I mean? Idiots. Clothes, medicine, food, water, all that type of shit, right? These motherfuckers come down here, the Proud Boys, the Oath Keepers, they ain't bringing no supplies, they ain't bringing no water, no food, no clothes. I mean, they came to shoot black people, right? And I believe I posted a picture before on one of these. Let me see. Did I post that picture up? Yeah, I did post a picture about these little rescuers up there throwing white supremacist signs up. And I think this was from out there in H-Town. Motherfuckers, see this shit out there in the water throwing up white power. So, we see what's happening. They out there throwing up their gang signs. So I want y'all to see that it ain't no games. These white supremacist groups have an end to be on the ground at these devastating motherfucking events. Is my point. And we need to use that same end to do right by our communities in times of chaos, if anything. And just even in our daily upon daily get down, we need that strong pro-community presence around. I don't care if motherfuckers on the block hate each other, man. We at least need to have that element of get along at play, because that's a quick way to manage the well-being of the community against real outsiders. Motherfuckers that want to see black people dead. You know what I'm saying? And remember that these militias, they usually claim to be like pro-Christian, pro-Confederate, anti-Islam, right-wing, conservative, all that type of shit. All these different majority white militias, notice that when it ain't no catastrophe going on, they try their damnedest to try to paint themselves as noble and upstanding and all this type of shit until an emergency situation arises when they throwing up white power neo-Nazi gang signs. And even I'm not saying that they try to be saints the rest of the time, but you get my point. Like, they really turn it on at these natural disaster types events, right? And the state that you live in, wherever y'all are at right now, if you're in America at least, whatever state you live in, they call on militias during emergencies. And as it stands, I haven't heard of, we ain't heard of no Latino militias. We ain't heard of no Indian militias. We ain't heard of no Asian militias. No black militias that come out during these type of events, right? We got a few black gun clubs and stuff out here that will show up at different kind of rallies and shit. But, I'm gonna put no names out just yet, but I got mine on a few right now. But understand that the federal and the state government, they simply be calling on these motherfuckers. Whoever's left out of what they don't see, out of who ain't visible or whatever, they just call on motherfuckers. You understand? They don't. I don't know whether they don't see the other outlets, but they call on these motherfuckers because it's like, oh, there they go, or they show up in whatever capacity because it's like it's in the state constitutions, it's in these state bylaws and so forth that, oh, you a militia, you have a legitimate authority to be operating when there's an emergency. This is the loophole that white supremacist society has seen to be able to even get around black people and do atrocities. You understand? That is something that we cannot not miss. And all these characters, all these white supremacist idiots, they spend all their non-emergency time talking shit about the federal and the state government, all this shit, talking shit about tyranny, all that shit about tyranny. We've talked about that. They run that shit because they can't get a certain type of gun for their 11-year-old son. They can't get a bump stock on their gun for their 8-year-old son they trying to give him for his birthday type shit. So they going crazy over it. But when an issue arises, the states that already have pre-deputized the militia in their state constitutions, they usually just reach for whoever is around. So they will be grabbing these types of scum to run rampant. Is what I'm saying. That's why I'll say we need black militias to balance things out. All branches of the U.S. government allow these militias to train up. All branches of the U.S. government, rather, not militia, they allow these motherfuckers to train all fucking year. 355 days out the year, they training and doing all types of drills and whatnot, basically the whole year. Then the 10 days out the year where some sort of atrocity happened, where some kind of major thing going on, then they set them loose on society, right? They spend all fucking year posting all kind of anti-black, anti-military, anti-government, pro-Confederate shit all year. They get to maintain a following all fucking year and rev up their little base all year. And then 10 days out the year when some shit go down, then they showing up to try to make a command presence amongst the people, trying to pick black people off type of shit. This is what they doing. So understand that that's what these militias are really training for all the time. They ain't training for no shit hits the fan shit. They ain't training for no when the society shuts down shit. Because all these white supremacist militias, these militias, they're not necessarily preppers. They're not necessarily survivalists. That's a misnomer. You understand? And they definitely not really trained to go toe to toe with the military, the U.S. military, like they always try to lie and say that they ready to do. Unless they completely being ran by some psychos, unless their little branch of their little militia is completely being ran by a psycho motherfucker. Y'all remember that Minnesota 3%er? What was his name? Jason Thomas. I talked about in my video about the Minnesota 3%ers. That dude, he was the one sitting up talking about he want to shoot feds and kill feds and all this shit. He got his little branch of the organization caught up in an FBI goddamn terrorism probe. Like, all right, motherfucker. And they say they kicked him out, and I always put kicked him out in quotes. We don't know that, but this fool making real threats to the motherfucking feds. To federal agents talking about the first fed he see, he gonna pop. You gonna pop the feds. I'm gonna pop the feds. Like, hold up. You know what I mean? The other white supremacist 3%ers was like, look, man, you know, you might not get the whole organization shut down with that type of shit, but you definitely finna get our little wing of the 3%ers shut the fuck down talking that shit. Like, I mean, back down, hold back on that shit. You know what I mean? Y'all remember how I said the Minnesota 3%ers, they got their start right after Obama's second term. And with all those white supremacist books started getting published during Obama's second term, revving up The angry white male, those books like The Neglected Voter, The Angry White Male, The Angry White Men, What's the Matter with White People, all these different books, right? Just really meant to catalyze white male soldiers amongst the population. That's what that shit was about. And we're still dealing with the, kind of the unchecked vestiges of that movement today. All those all white, all male centered writings, right? But my point is, my big point is, black people, we need to have a counter to their anti-black, anti-government militia elements out here. So when an emergency pop, we can feel settled that we, concerned black people, will also be legally deployed and deploying ourselves as emergency aid to our people. Because right now we just got these fools that's getting called upon. En masse, rather. And we be wondering where all these black bodies come up from during these crises. When something go down, a motherfucking tornado come through an area, and all of a sudden black bodies popping up riddled with bullets and shit. Like, motherfucker, what? That's not something tornadoes do. Tornadoes don't riddle people with bullets. You got a fucking hurricane come through. You seeing black bodies popping up in the damage, shot the fuck up, knifed the fuck up by one of these white supremacist militias, right? That's not some hurricane damage type shit, right? So shit is real, man. So your boy P, I'm just kicking it. I want y'all to check your state in the link that I provided. Let me know what y'all think about your state militia laws and shit like that. And, just want to keep that shit on the front of your mind. But anyway, don't forget to subscribe to my channel. Don't forget to hit that like button. Don't forget to hit that notification bell so you know when I'm dropping. Don't forget to check out my Teespring. I'm going to put up my fave on your ass one more again. Because that's my favorite. And good seeing y'all motherfuckers again, man. It was a crazy ass week. Ending the week and shit. We had these little storms and shit out here. Shit was kind of wild and shit. I didn't want to get Blue the fuck around on some Dorothy shit. You know what I'm saying? But checking in. Definitely got more coming today. So y'all just check it out.